This is the no nonsense episode. We're talking about why atheists don't hear you. This is no nonsense, no ads. We're trying to just get it out there. I'm not going to make you wait until the end of the video to tell you the real answer. I'm going to give you the number one answer, but I'm also going to tell you three components of this answer. And those are going to be A, the unknowns. And I'm going to talk about consciousness. B, materialism. Is it even possible? And C, a kind of epistemological superiority, which means a kind of monopoly on ways of knowing, which means we have conceptions of how we interface with reality, how we understand things, how we prove things, how we make things real. And so scientists have monopolized what I call the superior demeanor or style. When they talk to you, they feel like they know more than you, no matter what you're talking about. So I'm going to give you the answer. Why don't atheists consider your position? Why don't they listen? And then these are going to be the subsets. Here's your answer early on in the video. Don't click away. Go subscribe, go like, go all those things, because otherwise I'm going to run out of money. I'm going to be broken line in the street. Now, this is the reason atheists don't listen, because they don't have any doubt. If philosophy is the business of doubt, not only, and not the kind of doubt we can compartmentalize, a broader way of knowing that includes doubt. Atheists don't have it. They don't at all consider doubt. Why? So now we're going to talk about these three things, and that's going to help you understand why this happens. Because if you're trying to communicate with them, then you're going to have to understand this concept. They don't consider the possibility that you're right. So first of all, make your arguments better, because they're not very good. Two, listen to me. Right here, three subsets, unknowns. Atheists have this kind of mindset that there are no unknowns. They want to tell you what happens when you die. They want nothing. They want to tell you what consciousness is, atoms in the brain. They want to tell you all of these explanations for the unknowns. Do you have free will? No. Really? You know? And you're talking? B, materialism. They hold a materialist perspective, which means all things can be ultimately reduced to objects, things, material, physical qualities. They can be reduced to particles, right? Or atoms. Atoms in a broad sense. Everything can be reduced to atoms. Right now, let's talk about A first, doubt. If you're going to talk about doubt, what I've talked about in multiple videos, consciousness is not understandable currently. We have no idea what it is. We confuse it with material aspects of the brain. Thinking, thoughts, the self that we call consciousness, which is really the self, that's the only thing that really matters at this point in the debate. If you doubt that, if you can tell them you don't understand consciousness, go read, say, David Chalmers, even a modern philosopher who explains their subjective experience with consciousness that cannot be explained currently with our language. Scientists monopolize this. We've talked about that. So get them away from that and just say, do you really know what consciousness is? Yeah, it's atoms in the brain. Really, what you're saying right now comes from just the little atoms. First of all, we don't understand atoms. We don't even know if we see them. We're confused about what they're doing. They mystify us. But even that atomistic concept doesn't explain the dynamic, full experience that we have with consciousness. Go read David Chalmers. He's an atheist philosopher. I'm not going to speak for him, but that's what I think he is. But he understands that there are unknowns. Instill that doubt. Move on to number two, materialism. If we can doubt, we can easily doubt materialism, because materialism does not explain consciousness. So really it's related to A. It's a specific example of A, unknowns. Consciousness is a good example of that. B, materialism. The position we hold when we go into that consciousness debate, all things are reducible to materialism, is made skeptical by this same doubt. Materialist explanations do not explain not just all of our experiences, but the most important ones. And so given that, once they can accept that, they see materialism currently, the way we understand it, is not possible. Maybe someday we understand it better. Right now, it's a terrible explanation, and it's a jump. It's a leap from understanding really basic scientific, what are in fact principle things, to a greater question. C, scientific superiority. Again, the history of philosophy, 18th century. Scientists took over with their spokesperson, David Hume, took over philosophy and scientized it. They made the expectations in philosophy, they basically removed doubt. So what they did was they took a doubting discipline and they for whatever emotional reason, because there's no real reason to do this, they wanted to get rid of all of the doubt all of the time through all kinds of over talking, overthinking, rambling, what sounded like good arguments. But the end result was to remove the doubt, to make themselves feel better, to make everyone feel better, to make their position marketable. And to talk about religious people selling fear and selling these ideas, that's what scientists were doing. In the 18th century, Newton and Bacon came up with real scientific things. And Newton said, this is a scientific explanation, not a philosophy one. He didn't say it like that, but he meant there's tons of unknowns. Don't jump into explaining things you can't explain. So the scientists in the 18th century who were not Newton did this. And the people in this early stage of science that maybe weren't fearful of what could happen if they scientized the business of doubting real unknowns, launched in, explained everything, brought in the rules of science, brought in the limitations of science, and muddled up philosophy. That's where we get that from. So that is not a position of superiority. And yet today, when we argue from materialism and from atomism and from these atheist, what should be called scientism perspectives, we naturally come with it from a superior language. That science is better, science solves problems, which it does. Science keeps you safe when you're flying in your airplane, which it does. Science does great in science and horrible in philosophy. So when you're arguing religion, you point out this superiority attachment, this kind of, I'm talking down to you. And you can in science, if you're a scientist. If you're a neurobiologist, you want to talk down to me about how the brain works, the brain, not the mind, the brain, knock yourself out. If I'm not a neuroscientist, go ahead, talk down to me. I don't mind, because you're higher than me in that regard. But when you go into philosophy, into the unknown, into these contradictions, into this inexplicable thing, for example, consciousness, stop talking down. Admit, that's why I said A, remove the dogmatism. You've got some doubt. B, examine your underlying premises, materialism. Question that with your doubt. And then move to C, the most